What's up everyone, it's Tuba and welcome to How to Play the Tuba for Beginners. If you're watching this video, then you probably just picked up the tuba for the first time, or you are switching over to the tuba just trying to figure out how to navigate your new instrument. So I'm going to try to get you from playing your first note on the tuba to generally some of those things you can be focusing on as you just pick up the tuba. The first thing we want to focus on is creating a good sound on the tuba. Just how do we get a good sound to come out? So first, it requires air and it requires a buzz. So I like to think of it like an O syllable as opposed to an E syllable. An E syllable, if you breathe in with an E syllable, going E, a lot of the air is very tense and it comes into your chest and you can't take a full big breath. But if we breathe with an O and go, the air kind of generally comes from here and kind of fills up our entire lungs. And we want to be able to use a lot of air when we play the tuba, so we use this more O sound and we get a better sound. So then we take that great air that we just created and we make a buzz. So in order to do this, we focus right at the center of the lips and we say O and then M and go, and then we just blow air right through that. We go, take a good breath and go. So there we go, and we go. And that's generally how we make a buzz. We take that buzz and we put it on the tuba. And we go. And that's how you make the first sound on tuba. A few quick tips is when you get your tuba out of the case, very carefully place it into your lap, and make sure that when you put the mouthpiece in, you put it in, and you just give it a little bit of a twist, and all that does is make sure that it won't fall out, but you don't want to push on it this way or do anything that will get it stuck inside of this little receiver. Another note is that you can set the tuba on the bell. If you're going to set it on the bell, then you want to prop it up against something so that it won't fall over and someone won't come over and knock your tuba over. Like most people, I like to keep my tubas looking somewhat good, and that's the way to do it. Just take care of your instrument. So next, let's talk about notes. So as tuba players, we use bass clef, and not only do we use bass clef, but we have to read ledger lines below and sometimes above that bass clef. In bass clef, the 5 staff lines are G, B, D, F, and A. Those are the staff lines. And then the spaces are A, C, E, and G. And if you know that much, you can navigate kind of where the notes are on the staff. And then if you're going below, you just go backwards down the alphabet. And if you're going up, you just go up on the alphabet. Once you understand where the notes are on the bass clef, you can take a fingering chart and figure out what valve combinations or what buttons to push down for specific notes. And I will link a B-flat tuba fingering chart down below. So I would generally start somewhere the F that is right below the staff, and then maybe work down to the low B flat and learn those notes generally. And then maybe go from the F and then go up to the next B flat. And if you can get from the B flat to the B flat, that's a pretty good range to start with. And then just start to push yourself outside of that range. Another thing to note for fingering charts and just music in general is when you're reading music, there will be flats and sharps. So what a flat is, a flat lowers whatever note is on your bass clef stuff by a half step. And then the sharp will move whatever note is on your bass clef to up a half step. So know that sharps go up, flats go down. And your fingering chart will tell you what buttons to push down when you see that flat in your bass clef. The next aspect you want to focus on is how to take all the notes that we're creating and put them in time. So in music, we have something called a beat, and beat would sound something like this. And all it is the pulse that that music is using. In music, there's this thing called a measure, and so there's a bar line and another bar line, and all that does is help you measure out the amount of time between all the notes. And so we have things that are called time signatures, the most common probably being 4/4, and then we have 3/4, 2/4, and we can go on and on from there and learn all about different time signatures. But you'll probably start out with something in 4/4. And so what the top number means is that there's 4 notes in that measure, and the bottom number is what type of note gets the beat that we had talked about. So if it's 4/4, 4 means quarter note, and it could be, if it was an 8, it would mean an eighth note. If it was a 2, it would mean a half note, and if it was a 1, it would mean a whole note. You generally only see things in 4 and sometimes in 8. You can get beyond that, but it's less common. So let's break down each of these different types of note. You have a whole note, you have a half note, you have a quarter note, you have an eighth note, you have a 16th note, and 32nd notes. So what you need to know is that that whole note is generally going to be 4 beats, and then a half note is going to be 2 beats, and then a quarter note is going to be 1 beat, and then a eighth note is going to be half of a beat. A 16th note is a quarter of a beat. So you see that all we do from note to note is take that and cut it in half. And so if you're thinking in 4/4 and this is the beat, you'd go quarter, 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 quarter. Or if it was a whole note, it'd be whole note, whole note. So all we're doing is measuring the amount of time for each note. The other thing we have in music, especially as tuba players, are rests. So a whole rest is going to be 4 beats of rest. A half rest is going to be 2 beats of rest, and then a quarter note, and on, just the same way that we talked about notes. So a rest is just measured silence. You still have to count during the rest, but you just don't have to play anything. So now we take both the buzz and making sounds and everything that we talked about first, and then time, and we put them together, and that is how we make music. So really all you gotta do is you have to make a good sound, you gotta put the right fingers down, and you have to play in time. Another thing to focus on just when you're getting started out is something called a key signature. And a key signature is just the flats and the sharps that you'll be using for whatever music you're playing. So if you see something with a 1 flat, you'll know that B flat is always going to be flat. Or if you see 2 flats, you'll know that B flat and E flat are always going to be flat unless told otherwise. And even though the flat is only on this one line, it is applied to all B's. All B's become B flats in that key. So if you're playing a higher B flat, that counts as a B flat too. If you're playing a low B flat, that's also a B flat. They wouldn't show multiple B flats in a key signature. Another thing to learn is what a tie is. So the length of the note is going to be whatever's tied together. So if it was a quarter tied to a half note, then it would be 3 beats in the length. So if you were like this, it would be, even though it's written as a quarter and a half note. And what that tie lets you do is tie things over bar lines, so that even when you go from measure to measure, you can actually play notes that are longer than just one measure. Another thing that looks similar to a tie is a slur. And what a slur is generally the same concept, but over different notes. So if you had like a bunch of notes with a slur over them, you would blow through the notes like a long tone, but you would just change notes with the time. Another thing to learn is what a multi-measure rest is. So if you see a bar like this, and it has like the 2 things, and then a number over it, it means that you have to count that many measures of rest. So if you're in 4/4, you have to count, and you were counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's another measure. So 2, 2, 3, 4. You'll just have to count that many rests, and really that just saves space so that you don't have to just see a bunch of empty rests on a page. Another thing to know is a repeat sign. So if you see a repeat sign in music, it means go back either to the beginning or what would be the repeat sign but facing the other direction. And if there's one of those, you go there and then you keep going. And those repeat signs are only good for one use unless noted otherwise. So if you are going along and you see a repeat sign, you go back and then you come back up to that repeat sign, you just keep going from there if there's music beyond that. Another thing to note is that we have something called dotted rhythms. So if you take, let's take a quarter note and you had a quarter note and you put a dot on it, a dotted rhythm is going to be whatever that original note is plus half of that note. So a quarter note would be a quarter note plus half of a quarter note. So it would be eighth note. So you play that note for that long. And that just lets you be more specific about note lengths and how long to play certain things or how short to play certain things. And one of the super common ones is going to be a dotted half note where you have to play 3 beats in a bar because there's really no other way to show 3 beats in a bar other than if you tied a half note to a quarter. Writing a dotted half note is much easier to look at and much easier to read. As you're just getting started out, the basic things you might want to focus on is first, just getting a good buzz and getting that buzz to be a good sound on your instrument. If you can figure that out, you're going to be really set up to do everything else. The next thing you want to do is figure out how to get the embouchure and the sound without tensing up the lips and really focus on that good sound and how to move that sound around on your instrument. So that includes pushing the right valves down. It includes making sure you're buzzing the right note. Another thing you might want to do is look at some beginning keys. So like F, that's 1 flat, B flat, that's 2 flats, and then E flat, that would be 3 flats, and just kind of generally start to figure out when I see that key signature, these are generally the buttons that I'm going to be putting down. Um, if you can become comfortable with that, it'll make your reading of music a lot easier. Another thing you might want to focus on is something called flexibility in brass. So that's your ability to go between partials. So if you can go from B flat F to B flat and beyond easily, you'll be really set up so that when you need to play a certain note, you know that it's going to come out. And so by doing all those flexibility exercise, if we do things called flexibility exercises where you just practice going between different notes, and that helps you get better at just being able to just play certain notes when you want to. So as you're just getting started out, there's all kinds of things that you can do to challenge yourself to get better. One would be to just play more music. Take your books that you have and just play them. Play them as much as you can, or get more books and play those books. Go to the store. There's so many books that are probably for your instrument, and just try to play them. And that's going to be one of the fastest ways to get better. Is just read more music and play more music. Another one would be to just take auditions. So what an audition is you go, you want to try out for some band, or maybe your band has auditions, and then that tells you where you'll be in the band or just where you'll be sitting. Um, so for that, you'll want to prepare some type of music, and then you go and someone judges you, and then they decide whether you want to be in the band or not, and where you'll be sitting in that band. So if you have auditions, those are a great way to challenge you and force yourself to get better at your instrument because you'll have to practice in order to do those things. The next is doing something like solo and ensemble or just playing solos on your instrument. There are so many great solos for tuba, and by playing a solo, it forces you to kind of take your practice and your technique to the next level. So by playing a solo just beyond what you currently can do, you'll have to get better in order to play that solo. Another thing you can do is find some duets and get a friend or maybe your teacher or someone and get them to play a duet with you. Um, After all, we are trying to play music, so playing music with other people is really enjoyable. If you really want to be gung ho about it, you could start a brass quintet, or if you're playing tuba, a tuba quartet. and you could try to play music that you like to play with your friends. And that's a great way to just get started making music and having fun learning your instrument. And really, the whole thing is you're just trying to have fun making music for the first time. And if you can play the right notes at the right time with a good sound, you're going to have a lot of fun doing it. By no means is this the guide to play the tuba, but hopefully, these are just some quick tips to help you get started. Hope you have a good day.